Consider the following relation: cinema, which has the columns theater, address, capacity. Which of the following options will be needed at the end of the SQL query? So the query is: select P1 dot address from cinema P1, and you have to select the option out of these such that it always finds the address of theaters with maximum capacity. Okay, so let's draw an instance of this schema that is given to you, cinema. Let's assume that there is the three columns: theater, address, and capacity. Let's make some rows in this and insert values. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, address ABC, XYZ, MNO and PQR. Then capacity, let's say 10, 20, 30 and 40. Okay, this is our dummy schema that we'll be assuming in this question, and based on this it will be helpful to us in finding out the correct option. Okay, so now let's see what the options are and how do they differ from each other. So the first option is where P1 dot capacity is greater than equal to all. The inner query is select P2 dot capacity from cinema P2. The next option is where P1 dot capacity greater than equal to any, and the inner query again is select P2 dot capacity from cinema P2. The third option is where P1 dot capacity is greater than all, select max of P2 dot capacity from cinema P2, and the D option is same as the C option except that there is a keyword any instead of all. Okay, so the major focus of this question is on two keywords, all and any. So in case of all and any, one important thing that you need to remember is that in case of all, the options that is used or the values that are used with this all are replaced with the and condition between them. Okay, so this will become very clear when I explain you further. For the time being, just remember that all replaces the options with the and condition between them, and any replaces them with the or condition between them. So now, since the inner query for all these options is the same, that is, we are selecting capacity from cinema table in the first two options. So what would be the result of the inner query? Select P2 dot capacity from cinema P2. So the result of this inner query would be a single column, that is capacity, and the values of this column 10, 20, 30 and 40. Alright, now this is the result of the inner query, and we have to execute the outer query such that we always find the address of the theaters with the maximum capacity. So if we choose option 1, that select P1 dot address from cinema P1 where P1 dot capacity is greater than equal to all values that were the result of the inner query. So since I told you that all replaces or it places the keyword and between all the values, so what does it mean? Here, when we are selecting the capacity of the outer query, we will use some condition which would be corresponding to this. So when choosing the capacity from the table, we'll say that 10, we'll check for 10. Starting with 10, is 10 greater than or it is equal to the values of all the values of the inner query, and we would use the keyword and before in place of or between all these values. Okay, so I'll write it down: 10 and 20 and 30 and 40. So what I meant was that whenever the keyword all is used, a keyword and is added between the values that are the options to the all keyword. So the inner query result was 10, 20, 30 and 40, and when we are choosing the capacity of the outer query, we will use this AND condition, and then only we will select the corresponding capacity values. So here I have to select that capacity which is either greater than or equal to each of these values. So when I start with 10, I see, is 10 greater than equal to 10? Yes, it is equal to 10. And is 10 greater than equal to 20? No, it is neither greater than 20 nor it is equal to 20. So since AND keyword says that each of the conditions should be true, that means AND should be greater than equal to all of them, so then only this combined condition would be true. Since this is not the case in case of 10 values, so 10 would not be chosen as the result of the outer query. Now for the outer query, we check for 20. Is 20 greater than 10? Yes, it is greater than equal to 10. Is 20 greater than equal to 20? Yes, it is equal to 20 in this case. But 20 is not greater than equal to 30, and since we have to satisfy all these AND conditions, then only that value which is satisfying all these AND conditions would be chosen. Since therefore 20 would not be chosen here, since it is not satisfying this condition that 20 is greater than equal to 30. Okay, now similarly with 30, the first three conditions would be true, but 30 is not greater than equal to 40. So again, this would not be included in the result of the outer query. When we come to 40, 40 is greater than 10 and it is greater than 20 and it is greater than 30 and it is equal to 40. Since the value 40 is satisfying all these conditions, therefore this would be chosen in the result of the outer query, and the address of the theater corresponding to 40 capacity would be chosen. And since 40 is the highest capacity, so the answer in this case would be correct. So we can safely choose this as the answer. But to explain you the correct usage of any, let's proceed further. As I said that any replaces the values or adds the keyword or between the values. So when we check for option B, what would be the condition that would result? We would pick each of these values 10, 20, 30 and 40 and compare it with the condition 10 or 20 or 30 or 40. And why would we place or in this case? Because here it is given any. Okay, so you can simply understand all and any like this, that the value that will be chosen in the outer query should be either greater than all the values that are present in the result of the inner query, or it must be equal to the value present in the result of the inner query. So all greater than or equal to all of the values present in the inner query. But here, if a value that is greater than or it is equal to any particular value in the inner query, then that particular value will be chosen as the result of the outer query. So in this case, when we start with 10, we see that is 10 greater than or equal to 10? Yes, the first condition is true, and since or is an operator in which if the first condition is true and the following conditions are also or conditions, then we don't need to check further conditions, because for or condition to be true, even if one particular condition is true, we can assume the entire result to be true. So 10 would be chosen in the second query. Similarly, 20 is also greater than equal to 10. 20 would also be chosen. 30 is also greater than equal to 10. 30 would also be chosen. And 40 is also greater than equal to 10. 40 would also be chosen. In B part, if we use this statement as the last statement of this particular query. But will this result in what we actually want? If we have chosen all these values and then we select their addresses, will we get the theaters with the maximum capacity? No, because these are not all the theaters that are having maximum capacity of 40. So B option is not correct. Now coming to the third option, C. The condition is where P1 dot capacity is greater than all, select max of P2 dot capacity. So this was the result that resulted in the inner query of the first two statements. The inner query of the C statement would give the result of, basically here we have to select the maximum capacity from this table, and it would result in a single value of 40. Okay, because the maximum capacity is 40 and it is a single value. So this is the result of the inner query for the C part, and similarly it is the same for the D part as well, because here also we are having the same inner query, select max value out of all the capacities from the cinema table. So this inner query gives this result. Now what is the outer query? Where P1 dot capacity is greater than all. So basically this part is asking us to choose a value out of these four options, so that the value that we choose is greater than 40. Since no value that is present here is greater than 40, 40 is equal to 40, it is not greater than 40, therefore it would result in a null table or a null set. Okay, now what we are doing in D part also says where P1 dot capacity is greater than any of the values that was the result of the inner query. The result of the inner query is a single value 40, and there is no value in this table that is greater than 40. So this will also result in a null set. So in case of max operator being used, all and any do not make much difference, because the condition holds false for all these values present here. No value among these is greater than the value present here, and since there is a single value, so all and any do not play much difference. So that is the question that we discussed today, and the answer for this question is definitely part A. You must remember, then when you have to check for all keyword, please ensure that the inner query is, the result of the inner query is converted into a condition that has AND keyword between the values, and in case of any keyword, the inner query result is converted into a condition that has the OR keyword. Okay, so basically we select, in case of all, the value that is greater than, or whatever condition is specified here, greater than equal to all the values of the inner queries. And here, if even if it is true for any one value present in the inner query, then we choose it as the result. Question says that consider a simple checkpointing protocol and the following set of operations in the log. The operations are start T4, write T4, Y23, start T1, commit T4, then write T1, Z, 5, 7. Then a checkpoint occurs. After the checkpoint, there are certain other operations like start T2, write T2, X, 1, 9. Then commit T2, start T3, write T3, Z, 7, 2. Then the question asks that if a crash happens now and the system tries to recover using both undo and redo operations, what are the contents of the undo list and the redo list? Okay, so corresponding to these operations, I have made a table and written all these operations in a tabular form. So there are 4 transactions given to you, T1, T2, T3 and T4, and I have put these operations sequentially as they happen. So we are starting with start T4. Initially T4 is started first out of all the 4 transactions. then the write operation of T4 happens, then T1 gets started. Then after the write of T4, T1 is started, we commit T4, and then the write operation of T1 take place. After these 5 operations, a checkpoint occurs, and after the checkpoint there are certain more operations that happen. Transaction T2 starts, it writes the value of variable x, then it commits, and after that transaction T3 starts and performs its write operation. And after all these operations are done, a crash happens. Now you have to tell which out of these operations will be put in the redo list, which would be put in the undo list. Okay, so first of all, you need to know that checkpointing is a mechanism in database transaction management that permanently stores the values or the changes that were made in the database items into the disk. Okay, so when a crash happens and we have to save certain actions or transaction or operations that were performed into undo list and redo list, we have to classify them accordingly. So any operation that started or any transaction that started but did not perform a commit or an abort operation, that transaction and its operation will be put in the undo list. Why in the undo list? Because undo means that we have to revert back all the changes made by these transaction. Okay, so if a transaction started and performed half of its operations but did not complete, it neither aborted nor it committed, so it means that we are reverting back all such operations of this transaction and we will put these operations in the undo list. Okay, whereas all those operations or all those transactions that started and performed a commit or a abort, those transactions are put in the redo list. That means, why redo? Because all such transactions, they completed to their end, to their entirety, and we have to again do these operations again. That means redo these completed transactions when a crash happens, so that we can restore the database to its correct form. Okay, so to classify which operations are in undo list and in redo list, see which transaction out of these 4 committed and which did not. So starting with T1, it started, it performed a write operation, then a checkpoint happened, but then there was neither a commit operation nor a abort operation, So it means that here there is an uncommitted write operation. Okay, so we would put it in the undo list. Again, I am telling you, any transaction that whose start operation is found but no commit or abort is found, we put it in undo list. Now checking for T2. For T2, it started, it performed the write operation and it performed the commit. Okay, and then the crash happened. Since we found a commit for this, we will put this transaction and its operation in the redo list because it has committed after writing. Now for T3, it started, again it performed its write operation just like T1, but it did not commit or abort. So again we have an uncommitted write just like this, and we will put this in undo. Okay, here T4 also started, performed its write operation, committed, and then there was a checkpoint. Okay, now there is another important point to see here. See, there are 2 times at which operations can be performed. So if an operation is performed before the checkpoint and that operation or that transaction committed, just like T4. T4 started, performed its write operation and committed, and then the checkpoint happened. This means that this write operation is permanently stored in the disk. Okay, since these changes are already made in the disk, we need not do them again because checkpoint already wrote these changes in the disk. So in such scenario, in case of T4, it will not be put in the redo list. Okay, but in case of T2, T2 also started, performed its write and then commit operation, but there was not a checkpoint. Since it completed, since there is a commit operation, that means T2 completed, but its changes, the write operation was not written to the disk. So here we need to redo it. Operations performed and committed before the checkpoint need not be put in the redo list, so it will not be put in the redo list. Okay, but operations performed and committed after the checkpoint and before the crash will be put in the redo list. So the correct answer would be that transaction T1 and T3 would be in undo list and T2 would be in redo list. So undo T1 and T3 and redo T2. So this is the correct option, which is option A. So that's all for today's lecture. I hope you understood this question, and if you like this video, please share it with your friends and let us know in the comment section below if you want more such tutorials and lectures in our preparation series. Please subscribe to the channel of Easy Engineering Classes for more lectures on other computer science related subjects and the preparation series of GATE Computer Science, UGC NET Computer Science, or Bank IT Officer exams. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned. Good luck.